Dipali Goenka right here with us, and we're going to be setting the agenda for the day. Dipali, welcome once again. And,
Thank you.
You know, we at ET now thought about the textile sector, given all the experts who are going to be joining in with you. So here's what we've culled out. I think the key important things for the headlines for the textile sector are going to be the fact that, you know, the next round of the UK-India FTA talks are slated for this month.
Absolutely.
I think that's very critical, right?
Very critical because let me tell you, when I talk about Europe on the whole, consumes around 34% on the whole UK and, you know, the Europe part of it. Definitely. So I think this is going to be critical because it puts us actually behind Pakistan and Bangladesh by 9.3%. So I think that's really going to be a very key factor in what we talk about, and you know, that deciding factor.
Absolutely. What about the PLI?
PLI, I think, let me tell you, is very, you know, towards the man-made fibers where, you know, our competitors definitely stand to gain. While we talk about PLI, let's also talk about cotton, because that's our strength as a country. We're not only just the biggest producer, but the biggest exporter and a very integral part of the supply chain globally.
And you at Westspun play a huge part in that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is something we should really touch base on, natural and man-made both.
Sure.
Yeah.
You were also talking about MSME funding while we were walking in here to the conference room, right?
So I think this is something, let me tell you, I think when you talk about textiles, it's a long supply chain.
Absolutely.
And MSMEs are the bedrock for textiles, you know. They integrate the entire ecosystem for textiles. And, you know, that supply chain and the support that they need in the terms of funding in the textile sector will be a very critical aspect. Because, again, it is very, sometimes textile tends to get cyclical. It tends to be very impacted by the inflation impact. And, of course, the consumer, right? So that is going to be a very key factor what we talk about. Another important aspect, I think, along with this, should be about skilling. So when we are talking about all these gamuts, I think you know how labor intensive after agriculture is textiles.
And to be able to compete with the kind of quality that China produces and that kind of scale, I think skilling is very, very
efficiency as well. So I think that's something I would like to really talk about too.
Any expectations from the budget, since we are at it and we are just ahead of the budget on 23rd?
Waiting and watching for seeing how we can get more competitive in this entire ecosystem. And I think that's where I'll be very hopeful about.
Okay, great. So on that note, now that we've set the agenda, we're going to walk into the studios and have all of our other experts as well join in. Come.
All right, now I'm just going to mark markets while you know, our guest editor for the day, Dipali and Aisha, they're just getting you know, what should I say, mic'd up. Markets are looking okay. They are looking decent. What we saw was more like a mid-air turbulence, and that mid-air turbulence has not really translated into any kind of an ugly crash landing. So whether it is flows, whether it is budget, whether it is global strength, all of them put together, things are not looking bad at all. You have to bear in mind that it's just been a one-way rally. Just been a one-way rally from the election date, and markets are still, looks like they are hungry for more. I mean, the bulls are really hungry for more. There is just no bull fatigue, so to speak, in the market at this current juncture.
Yeah, but you know, individual names, that's where a lot of action is. So yes, bank that had seen an upgrade coming in from the Moody's rating in terms of the outlook is actually doing quite well, an uptick of around 7%. You also have Sona BLW doing quite well. New India Assurance and BSE is the other one. Remember, all of those changes which are happening with respect to the F&O and the regulations might be slightly negative for NSE, but others believe that BSE could be one of the beneficiaries. So that stock is higher. And then Cochin Shipyard and Garden Reach. In fact, shipping overall, Nikunj, is something which is going to be one of the focus area of the government in budget. So Garden Reach, Cochin Shipyard, G Shipping, they are fairly active. And then textiles, that's clearly going to be one of the focus areas
on
as
defense,
well.
somebody was telling me that you got to take care of surface, which is artillery, defense, that's taken care of. You need to take off, cavalry doesn't work here now.
Okay, fair. Yeah, you're
Who
right.
uses cavalry now? The purane zamane mein Napoleon.
Just the ground thing just got me to
mein.
cavalry. We still have a cavalry unit though.
Yeah, but
surprisingly.
Yeah, we have a unit, but it's just not operational. Fair. Tanks and you know,
yeah,
missiles are the ones. Yeah,
fair
but
enough.
I think the next theme really is going to be underwater. Underwater drones, underwater missiles, and I think that's
Underwater drones?
Underwater drones, yeah, they've started
Really?
actually. We don't talk about
Wow.
it. We don't talk about it.
Interesting.
But what is important here is that the traditional business and textile is something which I love to associate with. I've got a degree in fashion. Will you believe that? Never disclose that, but I have a degree in fashion. The official degree is in fashion, and life takes you from fashion to finance. That's so nice to have you, Ms. Goenka Nitino. Thank you for joining us. So day starts early.
Yeah, my day anyway starts early at 6.
And despite all the travel that you do,
Yeah.
wow, that's commendable.
I think textile keeps you fitter on the go.
But is the sector in that kind of a fit shape, or do you think the government needs to push a little bit more for it to get fitter?
So I'll tell you one thing, textile is in the focus in the terms of the integral supply chain, where globally a lot of retailers and countries are looking at India being in the focus for the supply chain for textiles. I think India needs to talk about skilling here, needs to talk about how we can get more efficiency in this entire supply chain, looking at the whole bedrock for the MSMEs, which are the bedrock for the textile industry. I think these are a couple of things we need to really talk about, because let me be very honest, I think China, we are talking about China +1, but China is the factory of the world, and the efficiency that China's had has really gone a long way. And I think for us to get there is something that we all are working on. Government is supporting a lot. But yes, there is that thing that we need to look at. But yes, just to cut it and make it very simple, India is in the focus. And India is that at the sweet spot.
But do we have the right infrastructure in place? And this is a discussion I was having with somebody else as well, whether textile could be one of those electronic kind of sunrise sectors. Over the last couple of years, we have seen how India has come up on the entire electronic manufacturing sector across the globe. Do we have the infrastructure in place? And I'm talking about, let's say, electricity, which was in deficit in the last few months. There's of course that entire labor and skilling issue which is going on, another logistics issue as well. Do you think the infrastructure is in place?
Infrastructure, there's lots to be done there, and lots has been done as well in the terms of the support that the government has given us. But I think let me tell you about us as at Welspun as well. Creating the ecosystem just 2 kilometers away from our factory for the ancillary vendors, giving them that kind of visibility about the demand, I think is something that we've taken on. But however, kind of the SEZs we are talking about, where you're creating the entire ecosystem where that could help, is there. I think technology, you talked about electronics here, and I think the OEMs play a very big role. How do you integrate the entire ecosystem with technology and the visibility in the terms of analytics and AI being a very big trend that we are seeing? It will be applicable to textiles as well. What is the consumer buying in which country, and how do you integrate it to the entire ecosystem is just maybe a couple of years away, but I think we've already started taking those steps because I think that will make it a far more efficient supply chain, because otherwise it is a long supply chain, as you know about textiles.
If I look at textiles, and this is just for my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, that if I look at the textile sector, we are struggling to be competitive in garments. In spinning, we are here and there, but when it comes to the sector which you represent, home furnishing, we are right up there. So what is that Indian companies are doing in home furnishing that companies like yours are right up there?
I think we are, first of all, let's talk about cotton. That's kind of a very key element to our supply chain. And I think India is in the prime focus for cotton. And I think that is very important. The other thing that I must also add on is the kind of manufacturers in India mostly are completely integrated as a supply kind of organization, from not only keeping cotton very close to them, but spinning, weaving, processing, and the cut and sew happens together. That keeps that entire thing far more competitive as well. So I think that is something, if you see, otherwise are it's a little bit more disintegrated. Here the entire ecosystem comes together, and you're creating the entire ecosystem of the MSMEs also very close. So I think that keeps you competitive. But there's still a lot to be done there, I must say.
Let's talk about specifics here. And the specific here is that if I look at the company which you represent, you are looking at expanding. And we were discussing it last evening that, looks like you are now trying to gain more market share of the house, from flooring to textiles to bed linens. Is that the idea? that you want
Let's
to
call
be
it home solutions.
home solutions.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the right word. Entrepreneurs knows the right word. Solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. So because now we have flooring that is in Telangana, we are doing textiles in all aspects, not only just bath and sheets, but bedding. We have the utility bedding, where we're not only keep putting that infrastructure in India, but I think if I must say that a pillow factory is coming up very soon in the United States of America, which is actually closes the last mile there, which actually is equivalent. Like how many towels you sell, I think how many pillows you will sell, and that's kind of a big market consumption that we can definitely see. So then fashion bedding is again, because again that supply chain is coming into India. However, said that again that China plus one definitely has to play here. So for us at Wellspun, while when we talk about exports, the entire basket of products which we offer in the terms of the complete bath, bedding, complete solutions in the terms of flooring comes to play in India as well. When I talk about India being the now becoming that consumerism that's coming to play here, we are seeing people recognizing brands, aspiring to have a brand, and that's not just only in the premium segment. The journey from that gamcha to the journey to having a towel, which is a branded towel, is coming to fore, and that aspiration is definitely what we see in this country of 1.4 billion people.
What is the average unit of the terry towel you sell at in India, not exports? That could be B2B pricing there. I'm talking about the domestic realization here. And how do you see it changing? Because you're talking about brand, you're talking about solutions. The same, छाप लगने से brand बढ़ जाता है, right? So where do you see that per unit consumption moving for you?
No, the per unit consumption. Now, let me tell you, when you talked about the cost and the price, I think here, when we talk about the cost, it is the value that product gives you in the terms of the life cycle of that product. It is not just about aapne usko dhoya and the color bleeds and you can't use it later. It has been price competitive on the shelf, but it doesn't work by the end of it. It is absolutely goes to waste. And that's where I would just put in as the value that we can derive. And I think the opportunity that we as manufacturers and have, because we have been servicing more than 50 countries across the globe. We know the consumer, we know the nuances of textile, we know the technology, we know what we can really create and innovate for this country. I mean, I'll give you a simple example. Bombay, you know how it is raining right now crazily. If you create a 550 GSM towel for this market, it's not going to dry. Lot of times in the hinterland of our country, the towel is not going to dry, or because there's not a washing machine there. They're not, and there's no power there sometimes, right? So how do you create a towel which is like jaldi sukhe, jaldi sukhai, which is a well-spun towel, quick dry towel, which actually dries up faster. So I think when you talk about the value, I will talk about the value that it can leverage in the terms of the usage and the life cycle of that product actually.
So now that you're into home solutions, tell me what's going to be a bigger pie of your business in, say, the next 5 years? And would it continue to be textiles? Because that's where you started off.
So I think textiles is a very integral part of, even a consumer. I think you'll need a towel to have a bath. You'll need a sheet to sleep on. And you'll also need that mattress, right? Or you need the floor to walk on. So these are going to be there till the mankind is there, right? So we definitely are going to be there. However, having said that, I think how we can complement that, given that, how we can become the home solutions for our consumers here, for looking at the kind of housing that is coming in this country, in the terms of, a good, better, best, or the premiumness, or at the bottom as well, how competitive can we be here? How can we give that, solution to our interior designers? I mean, imagine if there's a technology that can map your home and help the interior designer, and we put in the goods there.
Yeah.
How do you fast turn around that is what India will need very soon. I mean, if we have to go on the path of what China is, the population that is aspiring and is, growing at that rapid pace, we definitely need that. And I think that's where we'll play a very integral part in that journey too.
Yeah, and I like the fact that you're talking about quick turnaround, because with people working and the affluent India coming to fore, you want something which doesn't take that much time, and you want a solution provider and not just a retailer for sure. But I want to come back to the point where you were talking about the pillow factory in the United States. During the COVID time, globalization turned back to localization, and call it the slogans of MAGA and whatnot. It's a lot about people looking back into their own countries. Do you think it is going to be the trend going forward that companies like yourself will have to set up factories and units in those individual countries rather than making India the export hub?
So it's going to be a combination of both. Let me also say that. While I think if you talk about the entire ecosystem, we'll have to have a kind of a mixed bag here. Like if I talk about a sheet, you cannot just stitch a sheet in America because it consumes a lot of, it is very labor intensive. But the last mile, the productivity, the complete automation, I think will be a very key part of being part of that, complete supply chain. So it will be working, complementing each other. It cannot be this or that. So while it could be, and you have to look at the manpower costs and being competitive there, because that country definitely sucks out the cost otherwise. So you will have to have a very complementing supply chain closer to the market. But how do you look at being there and being right there for the customer when they need it? So it is going to be running absolutely together, parallelly.
So I have one more follow-up question before we introduce Ms. Menon. Every company goes through a phase. Sometimes it's consolidation, sometimes it's called as expansion, sometimes it is high growth. So for Welspun, for next 3 years, are you in consolidation, expansion, or growth?
So it's going to be a combination. I'll tell you one
That's
thing.
That's the easy way out, right? Combination.
Let me be very candid. Okay, now if you want the right answer, let me just give that to you. We've invested. Okay. We've invested for the growth. And now
how much have you invested in 3 years?
And I think we've talked about it. We've invested around 3,000 crores across everything at Home Solutions. That also includes our flooring, but also includes our green energy that we are also investing in the terms of going the sustainable way. When you have invested and created an infrastructure, we have actually planned and budgeted for growth there.
Okay.
So as we look at it, we might have to just debottleneck somewhere. We might have to put in kind of a cut and sew somewhere. And that's the way we are looking at actually creating that ecosystem. So while we look at taking the market share globally, which actually is an opportunity for India and us, that will continue to be there across the categories that we are available in and present in. When we talk about India, I think we'll be looking at the consumer basket, while what we can make, while we can create JVs, while we can acquire some companies, and creating the complete home solutions for the country, and also investing in marketing and reaching out to the consumer. So it's going to be a very interesting mix across what it needs. United States, we're putting in a pillow plant first. We'll put in the other 2 also very soon. So that completes that supply chain there. We have our warehousing there. UK and Europe also we are setting up. So I think the key thing also is technology. So while you talk about investment in manufacturing, it doesn't go just in isolation. When you're talking manufacturing, you're talking about Industry 4.0. When you're talking about technology, because it's a long supply chain, it is a little erratic supply chain. How are you integrating the entire thing in the terms of technology, predictive analytics, AI? What the consumer is going to buy. I think these are going to play a very, very, very key role. Otherwise, the inventories are going to pile up and it's not going to be viable for any one of us.
Absolutely. Okay, on that note, let me also welcome on board Ms. Rita Menon, the former Textile Secretary, joining in on the show right now. Ms. Menon, thank you so much for taking the time out and joining in today. We've got Dipali Goenka from Welspun living right here in the studios with us. And what I want to talk about is the fact that, the government of India has indeed set very aggressive targets for the Indian textile exports in particular. But looking at the various factors that we just spoke with Dipali as well about, and please feel free to add in over here, it's China +1, the government initiatives like Mitra Park, FTA, Samarth. Can textile exports do what IT services did 20 years back?
Hi, and good morning to all of you.
Hello, Ms. Menon.
Dipali Goenka, whom I recall. Now, at the outset, let me tell you, we are on a very short timeline. I was in textiles quite some time ago, but having maintained a healthy interest, I'll try and answer your question and get on to it. No, I don't think textiles as a sector is going to be the sunshine, sunrise, which information technology proved to be for India. Because, your guest for the day has already said it's rather disparate. Companies like Wellspun are fortunate. They are thinking companies. They are very, very integrated. There's a lot of thought behind the integration and fiber to finish. But I think the rest of the sectors are by and large very, very small scale oriented. There's a lot of work going on, whether it is fabrication or fabric finishing, which is such a crucial sector. So I don't think it's going to be a wave like that of IT, but it's very promising. I mean, the figures are getting to be promising. There are some good minds thinking about it. And I think we are quite firmly in the world stage for exports. And we just require a little more skilling, a little more integration, perhaps more, of course, more investment, perhaps foreign direct investment, which is happily allowed. And we need mega parks, which I do believe the government is promoting. I think it'll be slow, but our big target for 2030 and the way we are moving in technical textiles, that might be just the right multiplier.
So, ma'am, can I just
That's
say a
what I
few
feel.
things? Can I ask you a few things as well? Hello, nice to meet
Do-
you and be in
Hi,
the same
Dipali.
frame like you. I think the important aspect for being India, and I think you spoke about, IT. IT, I think, again, needs a lot of technology and, manpower and the skilling of the manpower. And I think
Yes.
that's where we as a country will have to invest a lot. What is your point of view on that? I would also like to broach on the subject of MSMEs, because that actually is the bedrock of the home textiles and the textiles
is.
apparel as
It
well.
is.
So if you could talk about that. The third point that you talked about was advanced textile or the technical textile.
Yes.
To get competitive here, what are the things that the government needs to do? We have our factories. We have 2 factories now, and we are working closely with, a lot of countries across. But what would be your feedback there as well?
For technical textiles, I do believe that we can leapfrog because there is a whole lot of technology. We know that US is the leader. We know that we are down the line as far as our share is concerned. It's perhaps 5 or 6% to 4 and 5%. But investment in skilling, as you've just recommended, and I have also spoken of, investment in labor, and those 6 or 7 very focused segments, whether it's Meditech or agriculture concerned, a lot of it is defense actually, happily. There's a lot of technical textiles being used in the aviation and the defense sector. Agriculture, of course, we are also so very, very dependent on agriculture. We need to do boutique agriculture so that we can use the items. There is scope for a lot of fancy fabrics for workouts and wellness and all that. So
My
I
pleasure.
believe the technical textile industry could follow a pattern with the 3 or 4 main ingredients to get on to a multiplier. But the rest of it, like apparel, finishing, the power loom sector and the MSME in particular, which is a focus, will need to have a very composite standard operating procedure for
Yeah.
both skilling as well as training. And let's get there. Let's get there. But I think it might be a slow train.
So if I may also say something, so while we talk about skilling, we are talking about our MSMEs, we are talking about technical textile. But I think let's not forget, one thing very important to keep India in that integrated sweet spot of the supply chain globally. I think R&D research and development will play a very key role in that entire ecosystem. What are your thoughts there, ma'am, actually?
Actually, Dipali, we've scored very well on R&D. We have a slew of institutions, whether it is for man-made fiber or whether it's for cotton, the CITRAS and the NITRAS, the South India Textile Research Association, the ATIRA in Ahmedabad, if I can recall. If I can recall right, there are at least 8 to 10 of them which the government supports. And there is a lot of R&D happening there, a lot of replication, a lot of working with specific industry groups such as defense and the agricultural sector, ICAR, and so on, which are doing research. Now, the issue is the transfer of this, the result of this research to our MSME, to our other spots, as you said, which have to become sweeter. So I believe we are not lacking in government initiative or private sector initiative, and the academics are working rather well. You must be aware that the IIT Delhi is perhaps the first research institute as far as textile technology is concerned. So I think we are working on R&D. I don't think that's going to be a blind spot unless you from the industry can assure me that there is a big gap somewhere. But I think the question is of translation of those results, replication, and thus training and skilling and the investment that comes, and that is a tall order.
Absolutely, ma'am. And I think when you talked about the BITRAs and the CITRAs and IIT, I think important aspect for R&D, which I may just add on here, is about working on more materials. Because it's not just cotton, but the other materials that are coming into play, and be a very, like you spoke about the athleisure. So there is a lot of work that really needs to be done. And if we have to be ahead of the curve as a country for the next 3 years and be more competitive, I think the R&D will play a very different role in the terms of the entire building materials. जैसे हम बात करते हैं वैसे like textile materials.
Yes, and construction. A lot of infrastructure. Well, I'm sure you're in some government, formations, Dipali, with the Planning Commission and the ministry. I think that would be a very valid point for you to push that there is a little more transparency required in the reports of these research institutes, which no doubt are doing great work because I've gone and visited almost all of them. And they're working in jute, they're working in silk, they're working in bamboo, they're working on banana fiber, they're working on technical textiles as well. And I was fortunate to have steered the major schemes like Technology Upgradation Fund scheme in my time, the massive parks, the textile parks in my time, and of course the technology mission, the technical textiles mission at that time, which began with a modest funding, but I'm happy to know that it's reached a pretty high proportion. So I think this is a point that industry must put forward.
Fair.
Because the results of research must be known to you so that you could adopt or you could
Agreed, yeah.
impact it in a two-way traffic.
Sure, Ms. Menon,
that's a
thanks
good
so much for joining us today with those insights. You've definitely put the foundation there with respect to the work that you have done. Now, industry and the rest of the bodies just have to make it, take off from there. But taking off with respect to the discussion that we're having, especially on the technical fiber bit, Mohit Bhasin, he is joining us from KPMG. He's the global co-head for the economic growth practice as well. Mohit, hi, good to be speaking with you. We're just discussing the potential that is there as far as technical fibers is concerned, or the technical textile is concerned. Ms. Menon was pointing out how US is clearly the leader there. What is the opportunity size for India, you believe, in the entire metrics?
Morning, and thank you so much for having me here. I'll just try to talk about some numbers so that we get the perspective. So if you look at technical textile, I think this is one of the sunshine sector when it comes to textile as a whole. Globally, we are talking about an industry size of nearly $240 billion, and India is currently pegging at 10%, which is $24 billion. Now, assuming if this grows, and we are talking about a 10% ratio, assuming if this grows the global size to 275 billion by 2027, we expect that India should be inching from 10 to 15% share and touching roughly $40 billion. And why this is going to happen? And I think Ms. Menon also just talked about the technical textile mission, which is the spotlight in this sector. It's called as National Technical Textile Mission, which is really fueling up the growth of this sector. This has created certain interventions to further fuel up the growth, be it the R&D, be it the skilling, be it the development of the sector or the manufacturing. Plus, you may have also noticed that recently Indian government has also organized a mega investor summit called BharatX. Now, BharatX has again brought in the entire ecosystem together for 3 days in Delhi, which means another level of injection of growth which government has fueled in. So I believe there are good times ahead for the Indian technical textile sector.
Can I just ask you one question? This is Dipali here. Great to connect with you here. So while we talk about technical textile as well, how do you look at the entire textiles together? And how do you look at the global, opportunity for India here, for us to know, and the competitiveness that you are seeing, for the different countries vis-a-vis India as well, and India being that integral part of the supply chain for a lot of global retailers as well and countries too.
It's an interesting question, Dipali, and thank you so much for asking. See, India, in my mind, is yet to pick up that momentum which other competing economies have already gained. And frankly speaking, over the last 5, 7 years, we have had the share losing out to our competing economies. But I think in the last 2 or 3 years, with certain interventions such as PLI, such as PM Mitra Park, such as NTTM, the technology mission, and BharatX, I think the ball will now become more positive and we should be getting a bigger share of market. Why? Because as India, I believe we have huge scope for expanding our capacities, which some of our neighboring economies can't. Second, we are fairly, capable in terms of labor matters. Third, in terms of the will by industry player like yourself to do invest beforehand and expand. Now, where we really need to now be more aware about is the element of sustainability. If we are not talking about sustainable textiles in next 5 to 10 years, I think we are going to miss this bus again. Now, this is a time I'm aware that government is also moving the needle on the sustainable textile. Now, if we catch up on this part and players like yourself help the industry to catch up to this wave, I think we have another big potential wave ahead of us to catch up when it comes to the global market share and India taking a larger pie out of it.
Can I just say something? So while you talked about sustainability, and I think that becomes something which I say and I swear by, because for us at Welspun, that's the bedrock of whatever we do. But I think one thing for other people as well, what could that incentive be for sustainability? See, when we talk about sustainable textiles, one aspect is it sustainable textiles alone? No, it is the ecosystem that we all create is what creates the textiles which is sustainable. So for us, we have that as a vision as a company where we want to control the landfills. We are going to do that. But if I may ask you, Mohit, what could that incentive be for the other, MSMEs maybe? Because the scope 3, when we're talking about the scope 1 and scope 2 for people like us, is going to happen because we will control that supply chain. But the scope 3 that we are talking about, and that is going to be the last mile, how do you think the other people will be incentivized to look at it or motivated to do that? I think that is something I would really like to hear from you as well.
I think the easy start point is to incentivize through the policy framework. Currently, if any investor like yourself invest in any state, there's a clear merit for you to get incentive in the OPEX and CAPEX. And the government can also incentivize through various schemes. We have different schemes which is incentivizing the manufacturer. But this mindset of incentivization against the sustainability, especially in manufacturing, I think we are yet to start that journey. But what I see is a bigger element when it comes to sustainability. I think it's a more responsible approach towards dealing with sustainability. It is not just the manufacturer who has to be sustainable, it is the consumer like me or us. We need to be more cognizant of that. So it needs a change of the mindset. that sustainability is an important element when I'm buying any garment, when I'm disposing any garment, when you are producing any garment as a manufacturer, right? It's more of a behavioral change. But yes, incentivization will get the ball starting. The first framework of sustainable textile can possibly help all the industry stakeholders come together. But all I'm just making is that I think we need to be really moving fast on this because the window is short, because other economies will catch up on that. Back to you.
Yeah, and perhaps our next speaker can throw some light on that. We have Atul Ganatra, President, Cotton Association of India, joining in on the show right now. And Atul, the whole debate on the show here with Dipali, as well as Mohit Bhasin from KPMG International is, how do you incentivize sustainable textiles right now? Would love to hear your thoughts on the same.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. You see, we are trying to, we are actually related, cotton is related with the farmers. And if we want to make a link between farmer to the cotton bales, we should have all the details from which farmers the giners are buying cotton and the which giner is supplying cotton to the which spinning mills. So for we have approached all the ginning factories association. In India, we are growing cotton in around 10 states. So we have approached the state association, ginner association, and we have requested them to keep the detail from which area, which farmers you are buying raw cotton. So if we have that type of details, it will be easy for us. Ji.
Thank you for being here, I must say, and really nice connecting with you. I'm Dipali here. I just wanted to, जो आपने बात करी, and I think सबसे important है कि now Kasturi cotton is coming into play, which the government has launched in India. And when I look at, the other global economies like America has Supima, Pima, cotton grown in America, or you have Egyptian cotton, which the consumer recognizes. I think by far, Kasturi can be at that level. But the important aspect is about the traceability and the blockchain that we are talking about. एक चीज़ तो बहुत important, another thing that I feel is about the farmers' education. Farmers, knowledge about what the quality of soil can be, what kind of, seed we should be using, how do we actually get them into that whole integral part of sustainable cotton supply chain, because globally, that is far more evolved. तो इसमें आपका क्या कहना होगा? What do you think and what is your perspective on that?
Ji. Good morning, Dipali ji. Yes. You see, our problem is our seed technology is very old, Dipali ji. We need urgently a new technology of seed, because this seed was given to us, BT seed was given to us in 2002-03. And immediately we have seen lot of changes. Our production, which was 100 lakh bales, has gone up to 400 lakh bales few years back. So there was an excellent benefit of new seed. But now what happened? This seed resistance is lost. Pink bollworms are attacking on the crop, and there is huge pink bollworm attacks are seen this year in the North India. So we need, first of all, we need new seed technology, and we have requested government to give this. Number two, giving new seed technology to the farmers. That is the only way where we can have a farmers growing kapas. Otherwise, they are turning out for the other crops. This year we have seen in North India, 30 to 40% farmers have shifted from some other crops because of the pink bollworm problem. So that is our first priority, to get a good seed, BT seed. Ji Dipali ji.
Ms. Ganga, I have a simple question for you. Yeah. Ultimately, cotton is something which is dependent on farmer, and it is something follows a cycle. It's a cycle. I mean, there is going to be a boom, there's going to be a bust, there's going to be stagnation. There is no easy solution, right?
No, I think I don't agree to. You see, it is a little. The weather really plays a very key role, and that's what I was talking about. And how do we look at the quality of Mr. Ganatra? He pointed out the quality of seed that is very, very important. The training of our farmers is very, very important. And again, AI will play a very key role in this. It's like AI, because
analyzing the soil and
not only the soil, the seed, but the weather predictability.
Yeah.
I think, and
I
also,
think that's becoming really unpredictable the way we are getting into it. But
and the
let's
pink
hope AI can help.
bollworm again is a very big element that he pointed out. And how do you safeguard that? The other, the sturdier the seed, the sturdier your cotton crop is going to be. So let me also tell you now, India is going to be a very key element of the supply chain globally. And we have to do what it takes. Like, for example, at Wellspun, we are working with around more than 27,000 farmers, 86,000 farm workers, and over 250,000 hectares of land that we are working with them to help them to see what we can work with them in the terms of quality, educating them so that they can get a better yield. So these are important aspects that people like us also get part of the whole ecosystem, and also look at working with the farmers, because it's not just going to be just working in isolation, and it's not the traditional way. Now I think government is also looking at really organizing the entire supply chain. Now with Kasturi coming in, branding that, also they're looking at blockchain. They're looking at the entire traceability mechanism. So there's lots happening there. So definitely water will play a very key role. The water table will play a very key role. So I think the different ways of irrigation that we can look at and explore will be a part of it. And I think we have no choice but to really look at and nurture the crop cotton that is going to be the bedrock for most of the textile manufacturers in India.
Okay, I want to circle back to the large big picture. The big picture is that India is where the growth is. India is where all the excitement is. Europe is not growing. Japan is contracting. And US economy is growing anywhere between 2 to 3%. So if your large markets are slowing down, what is the out of jail card for an exporter?
So let me also say something here. So while we talk about India growing. India has that great opportunity, but the scale at what we are talking about, the base is very small. So, I mean, for a retail brand, growing at a CAGR of 30% is there. That is continuing to grow, but the base is small. When I talk about United States of America, consuming alone 31%.
Can you give us some numbers for the benefit of our viewers?
Yeah, so 31% of world's consumption is consumed by America. Okay, $6.5 billion is the market that USA has in the terms of cotton textiles alone. Just cotton textiles I'm talking about. You're talking about UK and Europe together, they are 34% of the world consumption. So all said and done, even if the discretionary spends will go down, the inflations will start coming to hit you, but the consumption may go a little tad slow, but the base is very huge. The consumption will definitely be there, and especially for United States of America, where it's a very use and throw kind of an economy. The consumption is massive. Japan actually is growing at they have a very discretionary way of looking at textiles. Their textiles is something which is very fine. Even their towels are lighter and finer counts compared to the others. So yes, there will be those inflationary impacts, but if I say that, but the consumption is again about the shelf space, the market share, and there India has a very good sweet spot.
Have there been instances in last 2 or 3 years where you've actually beaten some of the Chinese companies because of quality or because of price? I mean, are you gaining that traction now?
Yes, we did that last year. India as a country did that in the terms of towels.
Wellspun as a company?
We absolutely did it because we being one of the leaders here, and of course we definitely are. We took that share, but I think India as a country definitely is looking at that, because not only that, in the terms of being a very important part of the supply chain, you look at our next door neighbors, they all are reeling under pressure of a lot of challenges, some the political challenges, some the power challenges, and supply chain challenges as well. So I think that makes us in a very good spot for sure.
Okay, I think that's a good time then to probably end this discussion on that positive note that India has managed to take the share, and not just that, it continues to do so. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today for that discussion. So really insightful, talking about how India is going to be the bedrock with respect to the supply chain partner for countries across the globe, and not just cotton textiles, which have been doing fairly well. It's technical textiles as well, which is gaining ground, and there's definitely a need of those home solutions provided. And Ms. Goenka's company just provides you for that with that solution. So thank you so much for making time today and coming down to our studios and being the guest editor.
Pleasure's absolutely mine. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, on that note, a short break and we'll be right back with the markets.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.